Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. This is our Back to School webinar series, and we have a few speakers joining us today from community colleges. During this webinar, we will be taking questions in our chat, so feel free to leave your questions in the chat. This webinar will provide information that you should know as you prepare for the upcoming school year. My name is Bukola Dada. I work with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Section for Students and Young Consumers, as an outreach specialist. Within our section, our focus is helping students and families to make more informed financial decisions about paying for college, managing money, and repaying student debt. Before we get into today's presentation, I will read a disclaimer as a CFPB employee. This webinar is being facilitated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It is intended to provide information about student loans. The topics discussed do not represent Bureau policies, positions. Any opinions or views stated by the presenter are the presenter's own and may not represent the Bureau's views. Nothing said in this webinar by a Bureau representative constitutes legal interpretation, guidance, or advice of the Bureau. As I mentioned, we have three great speakers lined up for you all today. Our first speaker is the Dean of Business at Metropolitan Community College, Dr. Lori Lothringer. Then you will hear from Heath Kearlock, who is the Program Director at the Financial Empowerment Center at Prince George's Community College. And our third speaker is Suzanne Matthews. She is the Director for the Center of Financial and Economic Education. They all have a lot to share with you today, so I'll go ahead and turn things over to them. And first up, we'll hear from Dr. Lori Lothringer.
Thank you all for being here today. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you just great.
Wonderful, yeah. Great, thank you. Well, thank you all for being here. It is wonderful to join you. Today we're going to talk about some questions that you may be answering very soon. Questions such as, should I go to college? Or where should I go to college? And there's always the question, if I go to college, what should my major be? Finally, and perhaps the biggest question of all, how am I going to pay for college? All of these are very important questions that you're probably going to be answering very soon if you've not already answered some of them. And all of these involve choices, many, many choices. Today, we're going to look at the economics of education. Why economics? Well, because basically economics is really just the study of choices. Today, I'm going to share with you a number of factors you may want to consider so you will be equipped and empowered to make good educational choices. Why is it important? Because these choices that you're making now will potentially impact you for the rest of your life. So let's look at perhaps the easiest question of all to answer first. We're going to start off with, should I go to college? So when determining if you should go to college, let's look at how education may impact your future employment and earnings. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there is a strong relationship between educational attainment and employment, where those with more education tend to experience lower rates of unemployment as compared to those with less education. Notice on the graph what a difference just 2 years can make. That is, the unemployment rate for those with an associate's degree is approximately half for those with less than a high school diploma. And when it comes to earnings and money, there's also a strong relationship here between educational attainment, where those with more education tend to have higher weekly earnings as compared to those with less education. Again, notice here what a difference just 2 years can make. That is compared to those with just a high school education. If you have an associate's degree, your earnings would be almost 50% more. And with a bachelor's, those earnings can almost double. So when you put these two factors together, employment and earnings, we see that education is really critical to the future of your financial success. It's also worth noting that this earnings appreciation continues over the full duration of one's career, as measured by what we call ROI, or return on investment, which is basically just a ratio that compares cost to the value of the investment. According to a report out of Georgetown University, community colleges and many certificate programs have the highest short-term ROI due to the strong earning power of those students they can quickly realize upon completion. Certificates in career areas such as nursing from a community college generate strong earnings in a very short period of time. Colleges that award a 4-year degree have the highest long-term ROI. In the short term, public colleges have a greater return than private colleges. The main reason is that tuition is lower. And in the long term, degrees from private nonprofit colleges have the greatest ROI. So to summarize, to increase the likelihood that you're going to be employed and enhance your earning power, yes, you should go to college. Now, if you're interested in early entry to the marketplace and those earnings that may be needed sooner as opposed to later, your best return is going to be a community college. Now that we've answered the easy question, let's move on to something a little more challenging. Where should you go to college? This is a difficult question to answer for many, for a number of reasons. You have so many choices. There are 2-year colleges and trade schools, 4-year public and private universities, and for-profit and nonprofit colleges. As indicated on the slide, there are many factors to consider when making your choice. If we were to compare and contrast public versus private, you can see that the most affordable alternative is a public college or university, where the more students, you're going to have more students, and you're going to have larger classes, have more majors and degree alternatives to choose from, and a lot more extracurricular activities. When we compare the 2-year and the 4-year, the most affordable alternative is the 2-year option, our trade school, where there are fewer students, smaller classes, less majors and degree alternatives, and a limited number of extracurricular activities. Other advantages of a 2-year college include more certificate programs, faculty who are focused on teaching, programs that promote diversity, open enrollment, transfer opportunities, numerous trades programs that lead to in-demand, high-paying jobs, and greater academic flexibility and forgiveness. So, what do students consider? Well, according to a survey of admitted students featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education, there are 7 key points that students think about when they're picking a college. Ranked by level of importance on the screen, you'll see affordability is the #1 factor students are considering. This research revealed that other things that it may be going through your mind right now in terms of as you're selecting a college include hands-on learning experiences, a sense of community, flexible schedules, and if I'm going away to college, do I live close enough to home that I can go home or my family can come visit? There are a number of important factors, other factors to also keep in mind. Certainly cost. How will you pay for it? But also from a consumer standpoint, investigate What percentage of the students graduate or complete the programs from the school that you're thinking about attending? What about transfer opportunities? Make sure those are confirmed with both institutions, your starting and your destination institution. And make sure you're not feeling pressure to enroll, whether it's from a guidance counselor or a boyfriend or whomever. Make sure it's the best choice long-term in your personal interest. There are many objective tools that are available online that can help you compare these choices, including the Interactive College Navigator. All of these resources are going to be available in this presentation at the end for you to reference in your own convenience. These tools are going to allow you to select a college, and not only select a college, but you're going to objectively look at things such as admissions and retention and graduation rates. Lastly, given the times we find ourselves, some additional critical factors to consider are going to be access and ease of online learning. Look at schools that have been engaged in online learning for a period of time and not just proactive or not just have reactively moved into that environment, but they're very skilled in the online community. Availability of student resources. Make sure things such as tutoring may be available online or off after hours if you need weekends or nights. Bookstore, virtual student services such as counseling, internship opportunities. And as you find the student population, as we said, what's the level of diversity and inclusion that you're going to be interested in? As you're deciding where to go to college, a critical consideration that you also need to make is, what's my major going to be? A lot of research tells us that your major may actually be more important than the college that you go to. Of course, this is going to be closely tied where you go to what you want to do or what you want to pursue. For some of you, you may know right now, I know where I want to go to college and I know what I want to study when I get there. For others, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So let's look and answer this question with two different things in mind. First of all, demand, and second of all, desire. So a recent study by the U.S. News and World Report ranked the best jobs based on many different factors, including pay and unemployment rates and growth and stress and all sorts of other wonderful factors. 12 of these jobs, interestingly enough, only require an associate's degree. Here you see a listing of those jobs ranked in pay from highest to lowest. And there's a varied degree of skill sets in this range. This is a very nice report. Other in-demand, high-paying jobs are going to include trades jobs. And here you see some of the highest-paying trades jobs as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Most of these jobs have projected employment rates well above other occupations. And typically these occupations involve some sort of formal training, on-the-job training. It's relatively short-term in nature, and often these programs are taught at technical or community colleges. According to the Georgetown Center on Education and Workforce Development, approximately 30 million jobs that pay on average of about $55,000 per year do not require a bachelor's degree. A number of these jobs are in the trades. As compared to traditional college programs, those who completed trades programs are 21% more likely to be employed in their field of study and enjoy salaries well above the national average. Now that we have a good idea in terms of what's in demand, let's turn our attention to something equally important, and that is, what's your desire to pursue a particular career field? As economics is a study of choices, economic efficiency refers to the objective that goods and services should be produced in a way that best benefits consumers. In alignment with this concept, have you ever heard any of the following sayings? Love what you do what you love. You do best what you like doing, and determine what you like to do and figure out a way to make a living doing it. The Simple Dollar published an interesting article last year that's linked in the resources. And it really looked at, it was entitled The Myths and Realities of Doing What You Love to Do. This article takes an objective approach when reviewing career choices based on personal preferences. As it suggests, do what you love to do, but don't necessarily bet everything on it from day one. It instead encourages the reader to take a more measured approach. One last thing to keep in mind, whatever you major in, it is highly likely that you will change that major at least once and maybe even 3 times when you get to college. Our last question, and for many, the most important, and that is, how should I pay for college? As the graph illustrates, almost 1/4 of all college costs are covered through student loans to either the parent or the student. The consequence of this debt is illustrated with some very basic statistics that include a total value of over $1.5 trillion, where almost 1/3 of adults owe more than $37,000, and 10% of those are unable to meet their monthly payments, that on average are about $400 a month. What you should know about this loan burden and default rate is that it impacts some others worse than others. A few years ago, the Brookings Institute did a study that looked at certain racial minorities and how they are disproportionately affected by student loan debt. As indicated, Blacks, Hispanics, and Asians typically borrow significantly more than whites. Further, the levels of default for Black and Hispanic borrowers is much greater. As indicated on the graph, completion rates also vary significantly among race and ethnicity differences. The bottom line is that this debt burden impacts the household's ability to accumulate wealth, and as a consequence, leads to larger wealth gaps. Student loan debt may impact your choices of careers. It may impact what you buy and when you buy it, your family structure, your credit and wealth, your retirement choices, and potentially those of your parents. Even in consideration of all these factors, unemployment rates and earnings indicate that going to college is a good choice. However, when you make that choice, remember that it is very likely that where you go to school, what you study when you get there, and your ability to complete the degree will determine your return on investment. Also know that it is likely you may change your major at least once in your academic career. So now is a good time to assess your skills, aptitudes, and desires. Finally, recognize it may be necessary to take on student debt to complete your college education, but take on as little as possible, knowing that this debt burden will compete with every other financial choice and personal choice as well. It has been a privilege to participate today. You are in an exciting place in your life, and by participating today, you've taken the very first and some important steps that will support your future financial success. At the conclusion of this presentation, there are a number of resources and sources of information. All of the URLs are provided for your use. Also included are the abundant number of resources available through the CFPB board. So thank you all very much for your participation, and I turn it over to two wonderful speakers, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Bukola, am I on?
Yes, you're on. We can hear you.
Fantastic. My name is Heath Kerlock. I'm the director of the Financial Empowerment Center at Prince George's Community College. A little bit about my background. I have a Master of Public Service degree at the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service. For undergrad, I graduated from Edinboro University in Western Pennsylvania. and currently I hold a project management professional certification through the PMI Institute, accredited financial counselor certification through AFCPE, and certified financial coaching certification through NeighborWorks, a training institute. Today's conversation that we're going to hold is a little bit about risk response to COVID-19. I say the saga of institutions and students because this is unfolding, and sagas have a way of unfolding with different plot twists and turns and updates and different nuances. A little bit of the overview. We're going to talk about the center, the purpose for today's conversation. A risk response, we're going to define it. We're going to look at some of the realities and 4 essential questions that we all should be asking, especially those who are entering college or currently in college. And then we'll look at some strategies in terms of how to respond to threat and opportunity in this COVID environment. The Financial Empowerment Centers were a project of the United Way of the National Capital Area, and we seek to improve credit, increase savings, reduce debt, increase the use of financial products that put individuals on a path to wealth building and financial stability. And the current project for the Financial Empowerment Center is located in the Washington, D.C. region, where there are 3 other financial empowerment centers, including one in the district, as well as in Fairfax County and Prince William County. The funding partnerships are obviously philanthropic, and the CFPB, for example, regulates some of the entities that help to fund these matters through corporate social responsibility. National and regional approach to improving financial capability. This is a widely known project through the United Way throughout the country. So it's not just local to the Washington, D.C. area. It is throughout the country where there are United Way Prosperity Centers, Financial Stability Centers, and things called Spark Points in the West Coast, and especially in the San Francisco Bay Valley area. The purpose of today's conversation is to unpack what it means to be financially resilient for college students, especially those who are prospective college students, and equipping students and student loan borrowers for the college financial experience with a strategic perspective. 1 in 6 students who had planned to enroll full-time at a 4-year institution next fall, or this coming fall, have changed their mind, according to a recent poll from the education consulting firm Art and Science Group. Most for financial reasons. Here's a quote for you. "I'm not going to pay all that money to maybe end up doing courses online, not be in a class setting," said one student. "Absolutely not. I refuse. I can prevent that from happening, and so I'm going to. I just would really rather not have my freshman year end up like my senior year did." Now, that's the perspective of some prospective college students who would otherwise like to be a part of college right now, but don't want to do it. But there are many students who are coming out of high school who would like to be a part of the college environment and want that experience. Realize that you're moving into an era where college presidents say that these are the biggest concerns: unbudgeted financial costs related to COVID-19, disproportionate impact on students from disadvantaged backgrounds, the mental health of students, accelerated rates of student attrition, physical health of employees, mental health of employees at the colleges, physical health of students, student accessibility to online learning, platforms and tools, faculty readiness to conduct online learning, and the accessibility to online learning, especially as it appears to hybrid learning environments. And this is from a study done in response to the COVID-19 crisis by Inside Higher Ed. Risk response. So risk response is a clever framing of how to respond to risk. And when you're doing a project, as many of you are familiar with, especially that involves other members or team members, that there are challenges to getting the project done. What if someone gets sick? What if someone doesn't participate like you originally agreed? There are all types of risks on a project, and just like there is in reality. So there are negative and positive consequences to risk. And for negative and positive strategies, we look to a sort of framework where there are different types of ways people respond to risk. Avoiding risk altogether, so not even attempting whatever the challenge is. Mitigating it by coming up with different ideas and ways of sort of acting wisely into the situation. Transferring the risk, that often involves bringing in another entity who may be able to back you up. Accepting the risk, realizing there's no other way around this risk, so you have to sort of enter into it. That's where many of you are. I'm sure if you're looking to go into college right now, you're saying, hey, I accept this risk. I know that my education may be incurring a little bit of turbulence, and I may not be able to go into the classroom like I want to right now, but you know, I'm going to give it a good try. And then escalating risk. So how do you respond to risk? 2/3 of colleges and universities recently surveyed by the Chronicle of Higher Education said they would attempt to welcome students back to campus this fall. So some colleges are saying that they're not interested in starting back up. They may be in harder hit areas or regions of the country or under-resourced. And some schools are saying, obviously, that they would like this. So the colleges are accepting risk. Risk response, in terms of college implementation, what can you begin to expect? So COVID-19 committees, work groups, task forces have been formed at local colleges. They're comprised of faculty, staff, administrators, and individuals from across the college campus, its major departments. And they're basically making decisions. They're trying to mitigate the risk. That means reduce the challenges involved. They're regularly troubleshooting and planning meetings that allow them to discuss these things. So future enrollment and financial difficulties are at the top of respondents' current and potential concerns. And when we look at what college presidents are saying, that approximately 96% of college presidents who responded in one poll are currently or somewhat concerned about unbudgeted financial costs related to COVID-19. So realize that if you do enter into a college environment, that there are stressors on the adults in these situations and the folks running, the administrators and staff members. The college students' risk response. So at the college student level, students have urgent questions. How will academic credit be determined? You know, will I get reimbursed for unused room and board if I choose to live on a university campus? Will there be a commencement ceremony if I'm to graduate? How will this affect my athletic scholarship? Or can I even stay in the country if my student visa is revoked due to travel constraints? And so you see here the Trellis company did a recent study that was released this month, in fact, and they looked at 8 or 9 different areas. So paying for college was one of them. And Dr. Lori did a wonderful job a moment ago helping to explain some of the risk involved with that. Working while in college is another important indicator because many community college students reported working during their time in community college. Student financial security, what's going on back home, what if a family member gets sick, student debt. Dr. Lori did a wonderful job sort of presenting the different risk involved with student debt. When you go into a situation, make sure you know whether you have loan forgiveness options, and also make sure you know that you're able to compare the interest rates on these types of loans, that those things are very important to your decision making. Credit card use can be risky for college students. In fact, there are laws in place to prohibit credit cards being presented to college students and having them sign up for these cards and to incur the type of debt from revolving credit, basic need security, and student perceptions of institutional support. Now that last one there is some of what we're getting at, because students need a nurturing environment even in the college and university experience. Here we see additional elements. Now there are positive consequences to risk, and obviously by signing up for the FAFSA, you get an opportunity to advance the learning opportunities for yourself. So there's Pell Grants and there's DREAM Act information.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
But if you could advance the slides for us, we're still on the risk. Yes, there we go. We're still on.
Sorry about that. I appreciate it though.
Thanks.
So, and obviously the DREAM Act, there are different opportunities for veterans, and there are tax benefits for low-income students. And so risk can come with opportunity, and opportunity also can be squandered. So not being able to meet deadlines or not being able to turn in your best work, those types of things can affect your ability to navigate this risk environment. An estimated 20 to 50% of students enter college as undecided, and an estimated 75% of students change their major at least once before graduation. That's another type of risk to the college experience. So don't get discouraged if you don't like your initial classes or the discipline that you're pursuing. All right, next slide. And so we just covered this one. So the Pell Grants and such can be very important. All right, 4 essential questions. I'm going to try to blitz through these. Let me just say, know why you're paying for college and know what you're paying for, because that will determine your sort of interest in navigating the remainder of your life for all the reasons Dr. Laurie has described. It will affect your credit score. It can affect when you buy a house. It can affect when you have children or when you get married or where you live. So those things are very important. Before taking out a student loan, consider the interest you'll pay as well as options you'll have in terms of running into payment troubles later. So that gets back into knowing your loan forgiveness options and public service and what that can mean. Don't assume you won't qualify for financial aid as well. So in 2018, all undergraduates who were dependents qualified for at least $27,000 in unsubsidized federal Stafford loans over a 4-year period, no matter their family's income level. So when looking at these 4 essential question areas, we want to consider how we're going to act wisely and what's going on around us. What impacts are you seeing COVID-19 have on current students? Well, there's stress, there's uncertainty, and there are different elements of the education experience that have been adjusted. So let's start with stress. Family members becoming ill, loss of internship opportunities, an ability to assemble with other students or cohort members who help to build up the efficacy of the moment. Uncertainty about personal finances. You see here ability to pay for food. There's a lot of food insecurity out there. And that's one of the areas where we have to be shored up on. According to Maslow's hierarchy, that's one of the basic components of healthy living. College-bound high school seniors. This report comes from 7 ways to support incoming freshmen during COVID-19. College-bound high school seniors have seen pronounced disruption in both the abrupt end to their senior year and an end without milestones or fanfare, and in the uncertainty surrounding how they will begin their college experience in the fall. 63% of surveyed students say that COVID-19 crisis has influenced their college choice. 54% also say that they are very certain that their choice is right for them. High school students say they're extremely concerned about the loss of high school events and activities, graduating from high school on time, maintaining an in-person connection to friends, and the duration of the social distancing. So these are very real to our college, aspiring college students and incoming college students. Very quickly, we're looking at how has the pandemic altered the way that colleges will operate in the upcoming school year. It's basically a new normal. And we're also looking at different orientations for students who are current students and new students, and preparing them for the adjustments of having to deal with facial coverings, hand sanitizer, safety messaging. Next, we are looking at the different modalities. So there's a difference between basic online learning, remote learning, and hybrid education. Online learning is basically not live, whereas remote learning is live, and they use platforms like Blackboard, learning management systems, at the scheduled time the course is occurring. So that is a nuance you want to be aware of. And hybrid learning means that there are labs or instruction that has to take place face-to-face. So make sure you know which courses you're signing up for as well. What should students know as they prepare to come back this fall? Well, here's a look at, in particular, since I'm hailing from Maryland here, what Maryland community college costs look like. And you see the difference between a community college cost and a public four-year, a for-profit, and a private college. So Maryland community college students save about 60% compared to students who attend a public four-year college. They save 76% compared to the average tuition and fees at for-profit colleges, and 91% compared to the average Maryland private college tuition. Additionally, community college students living at home may not have living expenses, which are typically $10,000 per year. Next, we're looking at what students, the characteristics of debt. And so a student loan debt can prevent or delay your ability to reach other goals in life. And you see it makes it harder to pay bills, make ends meet, harder to buy a home. Stick one there. So many of us have heard of, this is not a product endorsement, but the Toyota RAV4. Well, this is the 2020 RAV4. These are the characteristics of success that you can expect as you go through your college experience. Why? Because resilience is the ability to maintain a vision despite resentment or odds. Aspirational focus, it means that goals truly dictate your behaviors, whether that's getting out of debt, buying a home, moving geographic location, starting your own business. Being versatile is very important. Students who are flexible, adaptable, and fail forward are allowed to sort of explore themselves and their opportunities and their sort of drive. And so being versatile, being willing to make certain mistakes in your college years, it's okay. Just make sure that you have your focus in line. And then enterprising means that not just sort of a business mindset, not necessarily pushing that. Not everyone's called to have a business or start a business, but enterprising means you should always be figuring out ways to connect learning with your passion, with people, with projects, and personal branding. That's a very important characteristic of success as you go through the college years. What should students know in terms of getting used to? They should get used to emailing. I know students love to text, especially the younger generations, but you need to get used to emailing, looking over your emails, responding to your emails, voicemails, leaving them, and expecting to get a return call. Scheduling virtual meetings and office hours, it's going to be a little different than it usually is when you're able to drop by a professor's office or an office on campus for some sort of business you need to take care of. So be willing to keep yourself sort of task initiated on that front. Use your executive skills, stay organized, utilize the college-based web applications. So there'll be college systems that only talk to themselves. And so you need to be very self-directed and logging in. Get used to logging into applications and advancing that way. Read content for yourself. Know the terms of your loans, for example. Know the terms of your grants and know the terms of your scholarships. Perhaps getting a C or one too many C's could eliminate your scholarship if that's an option for you. So be very mindful of what you're earning and be very mindful of the terms in which you're applying. Expect specific websites addressing COVID-19 updates, serving students remotely and financially. What should students know as they prepare to come back this fall, part 2? So value-added living, map out and attend to the different functions and workshops on campus, and sort of a shout out to the folks who run student money management centers like myself. Use the money management centers to your advantage. Learn about spending, learn about income, savings, debt, and borrowing. Learn about investment, learn about how to protect your money. We're going to sort of race through the next few. What should students know as they prepare to come back? Have reliable internet and a laptop. And if you can't secure that on your own or from your home, make sure you ask or make sure you apply to what you need to on campus so that campuses can give you the loaner laptops and such. Also, public transportation has been identified as a barrier for many as well. So colleges are looking to donors and corporations and government grants and funding for help on those to help students get to school if and when classes open. Here you see wellness modules, things like that. So be privy to when these announcements are made on your campus and when to attend and how to apply yourself to these, because it's only going to make you better and stick out your time in college longer, stronger. Student gift cards, e-gift cards are being distributed. For example, at the college I'm at, 400 students received gift cards following invitations to needs assessment and different forms of identification. And then finally here are some websites. You'll get these in sort of the notes on the follow-up as this is provided for you, but certainly you're going to learn about some key resources, and these are ways in which college students can survive while they're in school, and they're better options for students as they look to rent and off-campus housing and situations like that. Now, living with your parents can save you quite a bit of money, so be mindful of the perks with that, and hopefully it's also a conducive atmosphere to learning. Without further ado, I want to pass the ball to my wonderful colleague, Suzanne.
Hi, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here with you today, and I've just been so impressed by the fabulous information and tips that I've heard from the previous speakers. So thank you for that. And I'm really honored to join this panel. And as the last speaker, I thought that I would leave you with some very brief financial tips that I think every student needs to think about as they plan for their college and as they plan for this fall. So before I go into it, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background. As you maybe heard in the introduction, I'm from Westchester Community College, which is just north of New York City, and we are one of the largest community colleges in our area with about 13,000 credit students and about another 11,000 non-credit students. So my role on the campus is I wear a couple of hats. I teach as an adjunct in the business department, and I also run a program called the Center for Financial and Economic Education. So that's a very long name, but what we do is very simple. We provide students with a range of resources and skills to learn to manage money and to make smart financial decisions. We also offer a one-on-one financial coaching program. And so I found over the years that I've been at the college that I think my role as both a professor as well as a financial coach has given me some really interesting insights into the financial needs and concerns of community college students. And, Keith, I think our previous speaker did a fabulous job of outlining how all of those concerns have really changed now in the era of COVID. And I also know from my experience, and you all too listening in today, that the whole topic of paying for college is one that creates a lot of stress for students as well as their families. And so what I'd like to do is just leave you with a few thought about kind of what would be the most important things for me to convey to new students going to college for the first time, or even to returning students. You know, I thought about what you can do today in the middle of July. It is a very hot day on the East Coast. What are some of the very simple things that you can do to prepare for this fall to actually improve your finances? So the first thing I would suggest is that you kind of look at what your college experience will look like. And he's actually did a great job of reviewing sort of and suggesting all of the different approaches that colleges are taking. As you may be aware, community colleges fall on a wide spectrum. You may have, on the one hand, colleges that are offering only remote courses, for example, either through online learning or other platforms, and actually the college that I'm with is in that camp. On the other hand, you may find some campuses that are trying to bring students back for in-person classes, and maybe you also have a blended approach where colleges are offering a little bit of both. But whatever the format your college is adapting, that is going to impact your costs. It's going to impact the way that you think about your college experience and the way you plan for it. And so, some of the simple things that I would like to share with you are, things I think that are important for really every student to undertake. The first one is reviewing your financial aid award. I'm assuming that many of you, if you are community college students, are receiving financial aid. Or if you're not, perhaps if your financial circumstances have changed, it may be that you are now eligible when you were not before. Second thing I highly recommend is creating a budget for the fall semester, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, the third thing is taking advantage of some new financial aid or emergency aid programs, and you've heard a little bit about that also. And then finally, being aware of the resources that your college offers for emergencies, such as housing, food, childcare, and so forth. And so the first thing, again, getting back to your financial aid award, I'm just going to flip to the next chart, I think. One of the things that students find very challenging is actually interpreting what their award may mean and what all the terminology in the award actually may mean. Now, many of you may go to colleges where you actually do receive a letter in the mail that is written in plain English that sets it all out in a very understandable way. Others may receive simply a report, like what I'm showing on the screen now, that may have a bunch of numbers. You may get it into your student account, or maybe you get it into your student email account, and that is really the only communication that you receive from your financial aid office. What I'm suggesting is that for those of you who have received financial aid award letters, perhaps in the spring or even May, June timeframe, get out those letters right now. Look at them, read them. Don't just look at the numbers, but also look at the mix of different types of financial aid that are in your award, because these have very significant repercussions for you in terms of your obligation and the impact that it may have on your future finances. And so, as many of you may already be aware, there are three major types of student financial aid forms that you may find on your award letter. The first is student loans. That, as you all know, is a form of financial aid that is borrowed, and like all loans, student loans must be paid back. So, also, if you receive a loan, it has two components: a principal amount and an interest amount. So, if you receive federal direct loans, which is the primary form of loan you'll receive through financial aid, you'll find that either they would be subsidized or unsubsidized. Those may be confusing terms for you all. A subsidized loan simply means that the government subsidizes or assumes the cost of the interest as long as you are in school, and the interest rate kicks in after you graduate and start repaying. An unsubsidized loan means that your loan starts to accumulate interest as soon as the loan is made. So subsidized versus unsubsidized creates can make a huge difference in terms of the amount that you ultimately have to pay back. You may also see a reference to Federal Direct or Parent Plus loans. These are loans that your parents can apply for. They're loans that are made essentially under your parents' credit worthiness and that they have an obligation to repay. Grants are another form of financial aid that I'm sure you're also familiar with, but these are the best forms of financial aid because they don't have to be paid back. Grants are like free money, and you probably are familiar with the most common form of grant from the federal government. That is a federal Pell Grant program, and those grants are really based on financial need and the entire financial package that you submit when you submit your FAFSA form. Scholarships are also a really important form of financial aid. I think this was mentioned before. There are many different types of scholarships that schools give out. Some of them have unique names. I would say every college has a unique range of scholarships. And if you do get scholarships, again, as was mentioned before, you need to understand what the terms are for that scholarship. You may have to maintain a certain grade point average, or you may have to maintain participation in a sport or some other activity. It's really important to understand the terms of scholarships because you want to be able to continue to access those scholarships. And finally, federal work study is another form of financial aid that allows you to earn money to pay for school by working part-time. Now, some of you may see in your form an amount for federal work study. Maybe it's $1,200 a semester. That doesn't mean, of course, that you automatically receive the $1,200. What that means is that you need to find a part-time job on campus, and generally the financial aid office will help you do that. Then you need to figure out how many hours a week you can work, and then you receive an hourly rate of pay for that. So again, all of these different types of financial aid carry different responsibilities with them, and it's really important, again, that you understand what all of these mean for you. And again, if you have any questions about your financial aid award, don't hesitate to contact your school's financial aid office. And there are great resources that you will also find some of these resources from the Department of Education, as well as the CFPB, also listed on some of the resources later on in this presentation. And finally, ask yourself if your circumstances changed since we received your financial aid possibly last spring. The whole world has changed. I don't think there's a household in this country that has not been impacted by the COVID pandemic. And perhaps the financial circumstances of your family have changed. Again, don't be afraid to approach your financial aid office to bring this up to see if they may have some resources they can offer. They may not be able to, but the point is that it's important for you to be in touch with them and don't be afraid to reach out, even in this world where so much of our communication is not necessarily in person, but is online. Another thing that is very important is as you look at the student loan amount, as was emphasized before, keep in mind that if you are offered a certain amount of student loans, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to accept the full amount offered. And it is really to your benefit if you can find ways to absorb some of your financial costs without taking out the full amount of student loans. Okay, so the next step is just creating a budget for the fall semester. A budget, as you all know, is a written plan for your money. It is something that I believe every student should do, but in reality, most students do not have a budget. When I speak with students, I often hear comments like, well, I have a budget, but it's in my head. Well, unfortunately, sometimes having a budget in your head doesn't necessarily work very well because you tend to forget things. But the main benefit of having a budget is to make sure that you have enough money to cover your academic and your living expenses for the semester and the academic year. And also on your budget, as I suggested, will be impacted by the instructional format that your school is offering. So having a budget does a lot of things. Number one, it not only allows for you to plan for your expenses, but you want to do is to find yourself in the middle of the semester or near finals and realize you don't have enough money to complete the year, don't have enough money for some emergencies that come up, and then have that be very disruptive to your semester. And also, as I suggested, having a budget will help you understand whether or not the financial aid award that you receive is really appropriate for your needs. So just a couple of points on this. How do you get started doing a budget? We spend a lot of time with our students helping to create a budget, and we use a very simple format. First of all, we recommend the students to get organized, that you put all of your financial records, your bank accounts, credit card statements, as well as your college correspondence in one place. And this could be any place that works for you, either a folder on your laptop or even a paper folder on your desk, whatever works for you. But the idea is that you should keep all of this information together so that you can better use this information as you put your budget together. So a budget is a very simple document with essentially 3 steps. Number 1, estimating all of your sources of income. Number 2, estimating what all of your expenses will be, and then subtracting your expenses from your income to see if you have a positive or a negative number. It sounds easy, but to be honest, many students have trouble putting together the estimates of, what is the money coming in and what is the money going out. So what I would suggest is that in terms of, for example, income, it's not just wages or salary that you earn from a job or a part-time job. Your income that you should include in your plan includes any source of money that helps to support you in your college experience. Income, for purposes of your budget, should include all of your financial aid awards. Even though you may not see them, perhaps those awards go straight to pay your tuition, but they are sources of income to you to pay for college. Also, of course, wages and salary, any money you earn from doing a job. Allowance, or any money you are able to get from your parents. This is another point where it's a good thing to have a conversation. If your parents have been providing some support in the past, their financial situation may have changed as a result of COVID. And so they may no longer be able to provide the level of support they might have been giving you in the past. So again, it's really good to have that conversation. So of course, any benefits you're receiving, or veterans benefits, disability, or unemployment, these are all important sources of income to consider. And then when you look at your expenses, there are a number of factors that go into your college expenses. The largest, of course, is your tuition. And as was pointed out earlier in the session, just the fact that you choose to go to a community college means that you have probably chosen the most affordable form of college tuition that is available to you from all of these choices. So community college education is a tremendous value. Unfortunately, though, most colleges are not reducing their tuition. Most colleges are not increasing their tuition, however, and that's the good news. In terms of the fees that you may be paying, these also need to change. For example, in our college, we are waiving a lot of the student activity fees because we're not having students on campus. Books and supplies may be different. So if you are going to be doing predominantly online learning, you may not have to buy those expensive hardcover textbooks from the bookstore. You can access much more affordable online textbooks. And I also happen to know a number of professors that are actually just providing a lot of the instructional materials online or through Blackboard, and not relying on textbooks as much. Other factors in your college expenses, transportation, food, snacks, as was suggested before, all may change if you are doing remote learning. And also was suggested, or also by Deep, that it's really imperative that you have a functioning laptop and access to the internet. I've seen having a mobile phone also is important, but I would highly suggest you do not try to do online classes using a mobile phone. I've actually seen a lot of students do that, and it can be quite cumbersome. So last, also in terms of other expenses, housing. If you have been planning to live on campus or in a residence hall, this may be a huge cost that you no longer have to fund if you're doing. Also, I would suggest to take a look at all of the other expenses that you have been perhaps spending in the past, or if you were a previous student that you spent last semester, because these also are changing. Clothing, maybe you don't have to spend as much money on buying some new clothing for the fall if you're actually not going to be on campus. Healthcare is something you cannot change. You certainly want to keep that. But other things like the personal care, entertainment, vacation, travel, all these things may probably be lowered or non-existent in the fall. So again, any kind of a budget tool that works for you is what I would recommend, and everyone is going to be a little bit different, but there are some great budget tools out there, such as Mint.com. CashCourse is a site that is developed especially for college students. And then there is other formats like Doing the Budget, which is a subscription type of a platform, but also one that you could check out if you need some help creating a budget. Finally, as was suggested, be aware that almost every college is offering one or more types of emergency financial aid as a result of COVID. Most every college received funds as a result of the CARES Act, and these funds were passed by Congress with the purpose of helping students cover unexpected expenses related to COVID-19. To be eligible for the CARES Act, students must be enrolled in a degree program. However, colleges have defined various criteria, and for the most part, they have made these programs available in easily accessible places on their website. Also keep in mind that in addition to the CARES Act, many colleges have additional financial aid programs to provide one-time emergency funding. And these are usually funded by either generous donors or sometimes, like in the case in our college, alumni who have donated to a fund to specifically help students impacted by COVID. Also, especially if you are a new student or considering attending college for the first time, be aware that colleges, most colleges offer a wide range of support services to make sure that you succeed. And so, for example, on our campus, we have a center called Benefits Access Center, and they have different names at different campuses. Some campuses, for example, have a service called Single Stop, but they all do the same thing, and that is to provide an array of services to help support you if you have a financial need or other needs that impact your course of study, such as we will help with things like referrals to public benefits, referrals to food banks, food pantries, assistance with housing, mental health services, career services, and many others. And also, of course, if you do need a laptop, help purchasing a laptop or books, you can generally apply for assistance. For example, on the website of our college, we have tried to make all of these services very accessible. When you come to the landing page of West District Community College, this is what you'll see, and you can click on these links and hopefully reach those resources very quickly. Finally, just one final thought. I know we're a few minutes past the hour, so I do want to wrap up, but Keith mentioned this in his remarks. Please pay attention to those things that could jeopardize your financial aid. And even though it may seem that getting financial aid is, well, it's not easy, but it is a process, you also need to be aware of the things that you need to do and take responsibility for in order to keep your financial aid. So just some simple thoughts. Pay attention to deadlines. Write the deadlines in your calendar or on your phone for applying for financial aid. Many colleges ask you to apply for financial aid in the fall or the spring semester. Keep track of the deadlines for applying for scholarships, because in many colleges there are a lot of different scholarships and different deadlines. Also, be aware that to receive financial aid, you may have to maintain either a minimum number of course hours to be a full-time student or at least a passing grade point average. And so that means that if you drop a class, you could be jeopardizing your financial aid if in fact you drop below the minimum number of course hours that you need. And likewise, I would suggest don't just don't ever just stop attending a class. As a professor, I've actually seen this happen so many times, and I don't understand why students do it. But if you just stop attending a class, that could mean that you end up with a failing grade, and that could impact your grade point average. So again, these are not necessarily things they will tell you in education, but important to keep in mind as you go forward with college experience. Finally, I just want to wish you all good luck. This session, if you go back and are able to review the information provided, has been really a wealth of information, I think, for any student, either planning to go to college or figuring out where to go or enroll now. And I thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to be with you today, and I will turn it back to our moderator.
Wonderful. Thank you all for the information that you shared today. I'm sure all of the speakers were able to get something, all of the participants were able to get something valuable from what was shared. Unfortunately, we are over time, so we don't have much time for Q&A, but I'm going to check. We did get one question in, and that is this being recorded and archived? I want to show it to my daughter who is starting the university in the fall. And the answer to that, I can answer. The answer is yes. This presentation will be available on our website. That's consumerfinance.gov. And you can check our website within the coming weeks, and the presentation will be available there. Alternatively, you can email us at students@cfpb.gov, and you can request to be updated once the webinar is available online. So again, we have some resources available that I want to make sure everyone has. This information will be available on the webinar, and it'll be on the website in a few weeks. And that concludes our presentation for today. Feel free to stay in contact with us. Our email is students@cfpb.gov. You can also go to our website and sign up for our mailing list. If you want to stay in contact with any of the speakers from today's presentation, their email, their contact information will also be available in the webinar when it's posted on our website. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you to all of our participants. And everyone have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.